When I was a kid, I used to have a lot of nightmares. Almost every single night, I would wake up in a panic, looking frantically for my mom and dad. And although I would have all different sorts of nightmares, there was one, I guess, genre, you could say, that I would have over and over again. I'm crying out to someone who can't hear me. Crying out to someone who can't hear me. The specifics of the nightmare would be different probably from night to night, but that part stayed the same. I was lost, I was being chased, I was being attacked, I was suffering, and I was yelling, crying at the top of my lungs, but no one could hear me. Someone might have even looked right at me. It might have even been someone that I thought loved me and cared for me. But no help would come. I was alone. That's the worst feeling in the world, isn't it? To call out for help. You know it's right there, but no one answers. You're struggling, you're suffering, you're dying, and the people that you count on are nowhere to be found. That's what the disciples of Jesus are dealing with in our gospel reading today. This reading, it's a beautiful reading, but in some sense it hurts my heart. I think we can all relate to this terrible feeling that the disciples of Jesus are experiencing. The wind and the waves are rocking the boat. This incredible storm threatens to overcome the disciples. And where is Jesus? Where is the one with the power to stop all of this? Where is their friend, their teacher, the one whom they believe loves them and cares for them? He's asleep. He's asleep. And so they cry out, "Teacher, don't you care? Don't you care that we're perishing?" How many of us have asked the Lord that same question? I bet all of us at some point. Lord, don't you care? Don't you care? As a priest, I think that's one of the things that people say to me most. I just don't trust that the Lord is there for me. Sure, I believe in God, but I just don't feel like He's present anywhere in my struggles. I know He exists, but when I need Him, He's asleep. When I call for Him, He doesn't answer. And I get it. Sometimes we just feel like, Lord, if you were truly good, you'd get me out of this situation. You'd get me out of this horrible mess that I'm in, this storm that has overtaken my life and threatens to drown me. You would help me find that job that I'm looking for. You would heal this illness that's threatening my body. You'd fix my marriage. You'd bring my drug-addicted child back home. You'd help me deal with my anger, my lust, my unforgiveness. You'd repair my broken friendships. You'd protect my family. But you don't do any of these things. When I call, you're silent. When I scream, you're asleep. It's like a bad dream. And in this sense, the fear of the disciples is so relatable. Teacher, don't you care? Don't you care that we're perishing? I want to share a story with y'all. I know I shared it a few years ago, but a few years is a long time. Back when I was in seminary at Catholic University in Washington, D.C., I discovered, kind of suddenly, that I had a genetic predisposition to something called free-floating anxiety. It's something I had never heard of before. This is essentially feeling of anxiety, right? A fight or flight response that comes and goes basically without any sort of trigger. It's very much like a storm in the ocean in that regard. One day everything is calm. The next day the boat feels like it's about to flip over and just launch you into the blackness of the waves. Now, I had always lived with the idea that the idea of pathological anxiety was nonsense. You know, people would tell me, "Oh, I have anxiety." I'd be like, "Well, that's part of life. Everybody needs to toughen up, have some thicker skin, you know?" But then it happened to me. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I couldn't eat. I couldn't even leave my own bedroom. I would just walk around in circles. I would be tearing my own hair out, my fists in my hair. I wanted to just jump out the window. I was on the third floor of our friar. I wanted to just jump out the window, not because I wanted to hurt myself, but because I needed to get out. I needed to escape. Everything just felt like it was crushing me. Every day was like a nightmare. I dreaded waking up, dreaded my alarm going off in the morning. I just wanted to hide from the world, wanted to retreat within myself, but I couldn't. My schedule, my responsibilities, seminary, being a student, being a friar, all those responsibilities simply wouldn't allow me to hide away from the world. And to further exacerbate all these mental health issues, it just so happened that during this particular year of seminary, I was scheduled to complete a class called Basic Supervised Ministry. It was essentially a chaplaincy internship. So in other words, once a week for 4 or 5 hours, I had to take a shuttle down the road to Children's National Hospital, where I was assigned to the cardiac intensive care unit, which is the hospital unit with the highest mortality rate. Sick children, anxious parents, grieving parents in a lot of circumstances. You know, I would routinely, I'd get to the hospital and I'd get on that elevator that went up to the chaplain's office, and I would feel the onset of this panic attack. It was brutal. The last thing that I could imagine myself doing while dealing with my own storms, these own storms that were happening interiorly, the last thing I could think of doing while navigating my own storms was to help others navigate theirs. So every morning I would get up early. I would sit in our chapel at our friary, and I would pray. And I would look at the tabernacle and I would just cry out internally, Lord, don't you care? Don't you care that I am perishing? Aren't you going to take this from me? I'm giving my life to you as a friar, as a priest, and this is how I get treated? This is what I get in return? I'm trying to minister now to these kids and these parents. How can you give me such an incredible burden to carry? I can see you're right there. You're in the tabernacle. I know you're here with me, but you're asleep. And no answer. You know, I struggled the whole year trying to understand why God would allow this to happen when I knew he had the power to stop it in an instant. If he wanted, he could take it from me in an instant, yet he didn't. Now, thankfully, throughout the year, I got a chance to see a counselor who helped me develop tools for kind of handling my anxiety, and it was a ton of work, right? It's not magic. For any of you who have ever been to a counselor to help you with something, it's not just a wave of a magic wand. It takes a ton of work. But by the time the school year ended and the summer rolled around, I was feeling almost myself again, almost. But still, that question lingered. Where was the Lord in all of this? Why did this happen? Well, you know, like all storms, it passed. All storms do pass eventually. But I didn't necessarily feel the Lord's presence. I felt like at times I was just screaming out into the void. But I'm stubborn to a fault. Those who know me, I'm stubborn to a fault. So I kept asking this question over and over. Every time I would go to pray, Lord, why were you asleep? While I was perishing, why were you asleep? And kept asking and asking and asking, and eventually I had the experience that the disciples have in our gospel reading today. At some point, I began to hear Jesus speak more clearly to my heart these exact words from Scripture. Why were you terrified? Did you not have faith? Why were you terrified? Did you not have faith? And I think that annoyed me a little bit. That annoyed me. Lord, what are you talking about? Faith. Faith. I kept coming to you over and over and over again, asking for your presence, asking for you to do something. How could have I had any more faith? What more could have I done? I trusted that you were going to get me through this. I trusted you were going to show me why this was happening. But as far as I can tell, you never really showed up. And that's when the Lord answered. That's when the revelation, I think, began to come into my soul. Not all at once, but over time. I began to understand. I began to hear the voice of Jesus so clearly in prayer. He said to me, Zach, I've been in the boat with you the whole time. Been in the boat with you the whole time. You thought I was asleep because I wasn't present in the way that you wanted. You thought I was absent because I didn't come to you in the way you expected. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't with you. I was with you in the chapel on those dark mornings when you took out your breviary and you prayed the psalms and canticles of morning prayer and saw your own sufferings in the sufferings of the prophets, in the suffering of Job. I was there when your superior went out of his way to find for you a saintly Catholic psychologist who could work with you and help heal you. I was there when your classmates, your fellow friars, went above and beyond to go and knock on your door when it was locked shut, to invite you out when all you wanted was to stay in, to help your life feel a little bit more normal, to help you feel a little less alone. And most importantly, I was there with you in the hospital room, in all of the hospital rooms on that cardiac ICU at Children's National Hospital. Was I healing you? No, but I was using you to bring healing to others. Your own anxiety was the only thing that allowed you to relate in any way to parents who had to deal with the crippling anxiety of watching their own children suffer. Your fear of facing each day helped you find some sense of solidarity with kids who woke up each morning wondering if they had the strength to make it through the day's trials. Was never absent. Was there in the boat. I was riding out the storm with you because there is no storm that happens without my knowing. There's not a moment that you pass outside of my presence. Brothers and sisters, that's where peace comes from. Not from a storm coming to an end, but realizing how Jesus was present in that storm. Not in getting our lives back to quote unquote normal and sailing on calmer waters, but in realizing that the Lord has never abandoned us. He was never deaf to our calls, never turned his ear from our cries. So I have a little bit of homework for you today. I know it's summer vacation, but homework for you anyway. I hope you take this seriously because I want us all to grow in faith. And I think a lot of us, if not all of us, carry some sense of woundedness that comes from that feeling of abandonment, right? We have all had that feeling that we're calling out to the Lord, help me, I'm perishing, and we did not feel we heard a response in return. So do this. Go through the most difficult moments of your life. Sounds like a blast, right? But we've got to do it. Go through the most difficult moments of your life. Maybe there are times that have come and gone, storms that have come and passed. Maybe you're in them now, though. Maybe you're in the thick of the storm right now. So go to that place, as difficult as it might be, as painful as it might be, and ask, Lord, where were you? Or where are you, if it's something that's still happening? I thought you were asleep. I thought you were absent. I thought you were deaf to my pleading. Show me that you were really with me there in the boat. Show me how you were present, even if it wasn't in the way that I expected, maybe a way that I didn't notice at the time. He'll answer you. Guarantee he'll answer you. If you're persistent, if you're stubborn and you keep asking, he'll answer you. If you take your time with these things, real time dedicated in prayer, it's so worth it. It's so worth it to have the Lord reach into these places of woundedness and heal us. You may have to take days, months, even years coming to the Lord asking these questions. Lord, why? Sometimes he answers slowly. But this is where we find peace. Having a calm life is one thing. I don't even know if it exists, but that's one thing, right? But being able to see God's presence in the midst of the storms, that's the call of the Christian. That's the call of the Christian soul, because the storms will come. That's for certain. But just as certain as the storms is God's presence with us in the boat.